I've seen it happen too often. You grab the cheapest lab shaker you can find, set it up on the bench, and after a week or two you're fighting wobble, leaks, or a motor that just quits. The regret that follows makes you wonder if there's a smarter way to spend a little more and actually get a tool that sticks around for the long haul. That's the exact dilemma I was wrestling with before I pulled the IKA VXR basic Vibrax shaker out of the box. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When you're setting up a chemistry or biology lab, the shaker isn't just another piece of equipment. It's the workhorse that keeps cultures growing, reactions mixing, and samples homogenized. The first question that pops into most people's heads is, will this thing run all day without overheating or breaking down? Because downtime equals lost data and missed deadlines. I spent a couple of afternoons actually running the VXR on a continuous cycle while I was working on a PCR prep and a protein purification protocol. The motor stayed quiet, the platform didn't heat up, and the vibration stayed consistent. That tells me the design really does handle the continuous operation claim, which is a huge relief if you're planning on 12-hour incubations. What makes the VXR feel like a step up from the budget options is how the shaker's diameter and the way the platform is mounted translate into real-world stability. The platform is wide enough that a standard 250 milliliters flask sits flat without rocking, which means you won't constantly be adjusting the position to keep the liquid level even. In a practical sense, I could place 3 flasks side by side, start the cycle, and walk away for a coffee break without worrying that one of them would tip over or that the shaking amplitude would drift. That kind of peace of mind is something you rarely hear in generic spec sheets. Now, who should actually consider buying this unit? If you're running a small academic lab, a biotech startup, or even a high school science department that needs a reliable shaker for daily cell culture or enzyme assays, the VXR hits the sweet spot. It's not a high-end, programmable model with multiple speed profiles, but its single-speed, continuous mode covers the vast majority of routine protocols. For someone who only needs occasional mixing of small test tubes, or who works primarily with solid-state reactions that don't require agitation, the VXR is probably overkill. A simple orbital shaker or even a handheld vortex could do the job for a fraction of the price. On the flip side, the VXR does have a few practical weaknesses that become apparent once you start thinking about more specialized workflows. The lack of adjustable speed means you're locked into one shaking intensity. If your protocol calls for a gentle tumble versus a vigorous vortex, you'll need to look elsewhere or accept a compromise. Also, because the unit is built for continuous operation, the power draw is steady and a bit higher than the ultra-low power models. That isn't a deal breaker in most lab settings where you have dedicated outlets. But if you're setting up a mobile field station on limited power, you might run into constraints. Another nuance I noticed during the trial run involved the dimensions of the shaker. The footprint is modest, which is great for cramped bench space, yet the height is just enough to clear most standard incubator shelves. When I tried to slide it into a tight shelf that also housed a centrifuge, I had to adjust the shelf height a millimeter or two. It's not a huge hassle, but it's the kind of hidden trade-off that can bite you when you're trying to maximize every inch of lab real estate. One of the biggest practical strengths is how the VXR handles the continuous operation claim. I set it to run for 12 straight hours while I was away at a conference. When I returned, the motors sounded the same as when I started, and the platform showed no signs of wear. The unit didn't overheat, and the vibrations remained uniform throughout the entire run. That kind of durability is worth the few extra dollars over a cheap knockoff that might sputter after a few hundred minutes of use. If you're the type of researcher who likes to tweak variables on the fly, you'll miss having a digital display or a programmable timer. The VXR keeps it simple. Plug it in, set the timer on the external control, and let it run. Simplicity can be a blessing when you want to avoid a learning curve, but it also means you can't set multiple stages or ramps within a single run. In practice, that translates to manually stopping and restarting the shaker if your protocol needs a change in intensity halfway through, which adds a few extra steps. Overall, the value proposition of the IKA VXR Basic Vibrax shaker lives in its reliability for the everyday tasks that dominate most wet lab workflows. It isn't a flashy, feature-laden instrument, but it delivers exactly what the name promises: a sturdy, continuous operation shaker that won't quit.